From spotting scammers that target seniors to defending renters' rights and investigating complaints about predatory pricing, it's hard to think of someone who hasn't or couldn't benefit from consumer protections. Now, there's a new push to get Minnesotans who've been hurt by financial fraudsters justice and put some money back in their pockets. I'm now joined by DFL Senator Ann Rest, who has a new bill out to do just that. Senator, welcome to Senate Spotlight.
Thank you very much.
All right, Senator, when we talk about consumer protections, that can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. What do we mean when it comes to consumer protections in Minnesota?
Well, we're looking fairly narrowly in this bill at fraud that is perpetrated on consumers. That can come over the internet, it can come in the mail, it can come at your front door, as a matter of fact, or through a text. People that are offering Minnesota consumers and taxpayers a deal that's too good to be true, that proposes that they will gain some sort of financial reward for sending in their Social Security number or their bank number, and we are finding that it happens. The particular set of victims in Minnesota has been primarily older Minnesotans. And just like the gangster who, when asked, why do you rob banks? Well, why are the biggest number of people who are victims of these financial crimes, why are they older Minnesotans? Why are they retired Minnesotans? And the fact of the matter is, that's where the money is. That's who have saved. Many are in retirement, as opposed to younger people who are not any less or more gullible. But what they don't have, many of them do not have, is a lot of money that is part of their discretionary income, or that comes in on a regular basis, that is part of savings or retirement or the value on their home. And so these particular victims have become a special concern of the AARP, and that organization is the one that brought me the idea for the bill, and they and I worked with the Attorney General's office to develop the language and then to introduce it. And as you mentioned, it's going to get a hearing in the Senate Commerce Committee this week. So I'm very pleased on their behalf. And the complaints that come up are that after someone has been robbed of this money, that there's no recourse for any kind of restitution. So what the bill proposes is to set up a special revenue account that sets aside some of the money from fines, for example, that when people are convicted of this kind of fraud, that from the special revenue account, restitution can be made to individual victims, as well as returning 50% of those fines, et cetera, to the general fund.
Now, this is, first of all, I love that you said that these victims are older adults because they have that cash flow. I had never thought about that, so I appreciate you bringing that up. Sure. How big of a problem is this type of consumer fraud in Minnesota? Well,
from the information that we got from the AARP, it is a considerable amount of money. 103, according to them, $103 million were lost in just the first 3 quarters of 2024. And Minnesotans reported over 22,000 fraud cases to the Federal Trade Commission, because that's the federal organization that has jurisdiction over it, and that over half of Americans across the country are concerned about being targeted. So if you get a strange email or a text, whether it's from a long-lost nephew who needs $5,000 to get out of jail in some far-off country, and if you just send it to him, that kind of thing, or if you a get-rich-quick scheme, if you just send identifying information, and as soon as you do that, your accounts are compromised and money is withdrawn without either your knowledge, sometimes, and certainly without your consent. And those crimes are prosecuted. Right now, if they can't actually find the person to start with, to give them part of the fines that are collected, sometimes the criminals no longer have the money or wherewithal to do that, but sometimes there is, and so that money goes into a special revenue account, and it can be used to provide restitution to the victims, either in whole or in part.
I was going to ask, what systems we currently have in place to protect consumers, and right now we do prosecute these types of criminals. I was going to ask, what happens to that money in the current system?
Well, if it is not able to be, and there are lots of reasons that are, it's impractical. The person, the victim, can't be found, but the criminal is still being fined. Okay, and so currently, those fines, as they are collected, go 100% into the general fund, and some cases that are brought, the victim is right there and can receive the money, the fine themselves, the money from the fine, according to how the court judges it. But often the victims are just left with nothing. And what this fund will do is take half of the dollars that otherwise cannot be distributed to an individual, put them in a special revenue account, or the money that goes into the special revenue account, and then 50% of those funds, and we're strongly considering putting a cap on how much goes into that fund, but and it's on an annual basis. If they don't catch any criminals and prosecute them and convict them in any given year, then no money would go into that account or even back to the general fund. So it is an attempt to, where we can, to provide some sort of restitution on those losses.
Senator, you mentioned, the Federal Consumer Protection Agency, and there's been a lot of discussion.
Well, it's the Federal Trade Commission that actually, the FTC, that has consumer protection powers within it.
Okay. There's been a lot of discussion at the federal level about what's going on with consumer protections, and it has Minnesotans concerned. As a Minnesota legislator, what can you do to help ease those concerns? Do you think this bill is a step along that way?
Well, I certainly do, and what we can do is almost the number one responsibility of any legislator, and that is listen to your constituents. And I found out about this issue and about this idea for a bill from a constituent who attended a listening session that I hold many of in New Hope, and I was very intrigued by the possibility, and then reached out to AARP, and together produced this bill of setting up a special revenue fund for to protect to the degree possible and restore some of their financial security.
Senator, that's a great story of how one constituent can have such a big impact. That one person planted an idea.
Just show up at a listening session or a town meeting and make your case, and I think most legislators will pay attention.
Senator, is there anything else you'd like to say on this topic?
No, I so appreciate however, that it is getting attention that it needs, because I think from the numbers I gave you, you can see it's a growing problem, and it's a huge problem. And we shouldn't have 22,000 Minnesotans become the victims of this kind of financial crime. And this doesn't stop the crime, this bill, but it does recognize the legitimate needs of the people who have been victimized.
And we know that that goes beyond just the individual, too. It's their families that are impacted, or even the economy. Indeed. When they don't have that money to spend.
Right.
All right. Senator, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, well, it was a pleasure. Thank you for your interest.
Absolutely.